Okay, so Erev Tov. And as I said, Michael asked that we discuss the changes that the non-religious are trying to impose on Ra'anana and what we can do about it. I'll just give a little bit of a picture. Um, 1 second. Okay, so just to get people, I don't know if everybody's even aware of what's happening, but in the local elections, municipal elections a few months ago, a party which is called in Hebrew Harova Demokrati, which is made up of, I believe, 4 different parties. It's a new party called Jose Chadash, which means a, a new contract, which is to say that the different elements in Israeli society should have a new contract between them as far as religious and non-religious, how the public area is handled, and the way the contract that we had before is they don't want that. They want a new contract. And they joined with Meretz and with Machane Mamlachti and with Yesh Atid. And they got 7 seats out of 19 in the municipal, what do you call it? Sorry? Yeah, but in the council, thank you, the Moitza. In the city council, 7 out of 19 seats. And they're in the coalition and they demanded all kinds of things and they're fighting for things that they believe in, which are in their eyes an expression of freedom. And a lot of it has to do with Shabbat and with what religiously, halakhically is desecrating Shabbat, which is buses on Shabbat, public transportation, which is cafes being open on Shabbat, and also narrowing the number of sites that are designated for Batei Knesset, maybe some other things along those lines that I don't remember right now. And there's a big stir in some of the religious community and some of the rabbis in Ra'anana about these occurrences. So Michael is asking me to relate to that. Let me say, first of all, that there was an attempt. I think there was not an attempt. There was some rabbis took action and went. I went to speak to one of the rabbis in town to influence that whatever action will take place will be peaceful and not only not violent physically, but not aggressive. That it won't do any good. It will cause only harm. You know, the thing they would like. Well, even let me say, even before that, I'm guessing nobody told me what they voted. Okay, maybe somebody did, but I don't remember. But we may have within this group people who voted for them, certainly for religious parties in Ra'anana, so that there can be even an argument within us, amongst us. So I think that a lot of what feeds this kind of party or these kind of decisions in their agenda and in their actions when they entered the coalition and then being part of city council and part of the coalition leading the city was a feeling of being pushed back, of being a lot of religious coercion going on, religion being very overpowering and aggressive and all kinds of things like that. And if the reaction, if the religious public reacts in a very aggressive way, it will feed their claims and their supporters and will only make them stronger in the long run. It's clear to me now that if they had positioned, if they had put a candidate for mayor, they would have won the election and who would be mayor. They didn't do that in Herzliya. That happened, and there were other places. So I had a part in influencing a little bit that the reaction, that whatever activity will not be over aggressive or extremely aggressive. And they wrote up a letter, and actually some of the rabbis wanted it to be more aggressive than it was, and some not. And they asked me if I would sign it, and I read it, and I said I won't sign it because it was non-aggressive. I have to say it was not aggressive. And the rabbi that I spoke to said to me that you have to understand, this is what he said to me, that we reached this point after, after bringing down several is this the right way to pronounce this? Decibels of aggressiveness in this letter to the mayor, and so if there's something that you don't like, come on, join us, and this way we can be a stronger force together. Just like you're not going to get everything you want, they're not going to get everything they want. But I told him that I appreciate what he did, but I'm not signing because what I was missing in that letter, and here for the first time I'm saying something about second time about my own opinion. What I was missing was an acceptance or a statement that the religious people, public and leaders, need to be attentive to what a party like this or non-religious people are saying. What is it that's bothering them? Why do they think that we need a new contract between religious and non-religious in Ra'anana, in Israel, in other places? What is it that they're missing? What is it that's getting on their nerves, that's upsetting them? You don't have to agree with everything they say. You don't even have to agree with anything they say, but you have to hear what they're saying and try and work with that in mind and decide what's the best way to go about it. Since then, there hasn't been a lot of uproar. There hasn't been a lot of people are not talking about it a lot. They are in the coalition together, religious parties and this Democratic Party are all in the coalition together, which is a big compromise on all sides, I would say. And now I'd like to address a little bit a few things about this. First of all, I'd like to say that without Yahadut, and Yahadut means Torah and mitzvot, faith in the Torah, belief in the Torah and mitzvot, that is certainly, it's not the only aspect of Yahadut, but there is not Yahadut. I'm saying my own beliefs and opinions. There is not Yahadut without religion, without Torah and mitzvot and halakha. And without that, the state of Israel becomes like a body without a soul. Mamash. I think that the state of Israel cannot survive without Yahadut, without halachic, practical expressions of Yahadut in the state. And I consider it mamash pikuach nefesh. Without Yahadut, this state does not have justification for its existence on a spiritual, call it philosophical, call it theological level, but it also doesn't have the spiritual strength. It doesn't have the resilience. It doesn't have the motivation for Am Yisrael to come together and create and take care of its own state without Yahadut, without Torah and mitzvot. All this said, you don't create Jewish identity by use of force. It doesn't work. It creates backlash. It creates the opposite. And we've discussed this in the past, and I don't believe that it is religion. It's not, forcing someone to do something Jewish is not religious. It's using force to get someone to refrain from transgressing a certain prohibition in the Torah, but it's not religion. It doesn't make him identify with anything that you're forcing him not to do, and so on. I have to say that everyone agrees. No one is talking about going into anyone's private life or private home and telling them how to live. Meaning people drive on Shabbat. No one is asking those off the streets in Ra'anana to pass a municipal law that you're not allowed to drive in Ra'anana or anything like that. The issues are the public sphere. How we act publicly as a city, as a community, as a nation. These are the issues. So the extremes are agreed upon, at least to some extent. And I believe that what we need in the state is broad agreements about the broad strokes of the state being Jewish, as one of the movements for these kind of things in Israel today is called Shmonim al Shmonim, 80 on 80, meaning 80% of his Jewish Israelis agree on 80% of the issues, meaning that the Chagim are Jewish Chagim, that Yom Kippur is a day off, that Shabbat is a day off, that that the army should be kosher, that the Knesset should not work on Shabbat, all kinds of things about the way the public should be. There's a big argument about the 20%. But before we get there, and then there's the 80% who are religious who agree to a lot of the democratic, liberal, basic concepts. So there's an agreement of 80% of Jewish Israelis, about 80% about how the state should function. And so let's first of all give expression. Let's decide on these 80% and make them a law. And there are going to be extremes, 10% on either side, that are going to make a fuss about it and wild demonstrations, and they'll talk aggressively against it and so on. But there is a large number of there is a large percentage of us in Israel who can agree on these broad strokes. And then about the more fine details, I believe we should try and live together with compromise and so on. And in this sense, I agree with something that the number one leader of the party is Shmuel Wegman. Shmuel said on a TV interview, he said a status quo met, the status quo that, so to speak, supposedly Israel functioned according to this since the establishment of the state, it's dead. And some religious people were very, very angry and aggressive towards this because they understood him to be saying, I am killing the status quo. And I agree with Shmuel. The status quo died. It's been dead for decades. Everybody's trying to give life to their side of the status quo. That's all. Or to push back the other side. It doesn't really exist. The country is not really functioning according to that status quo. And it's not good. It's not constructive. It just leaves, it doesn't give anybody what they really care about. It certainly doesn't create a cohesive people, a nation. We have to be together. We have to work together. We have to have strong connections and working together. So what do I think? I think, first of all, that it's not only non-religious. There are religious people in the party, by the way. There are religious people who vote for this party because they believe that this is, that this things have to be done in Israel in agreement and not by use of political power. Will the politics in Ra'anana and in the country enable this? That's a big, big, big question. If you ask me who you should vote for in the next elections, state elections and local elections, I will tell you that the number one criteria in my mind who to vote for is people who are interested in talking to people who disagree with them and working together, and not in creating extreme religious or extreme anti-religious or extreme right or extreme left governments or municipal councils where one side gets a lot of what they want and the other side is overrun, is oppressed. I'm not interested in that. So I'm not saying which side to vote for, but vote for those who want this 80 on 80 idea, who want to reach broad agreements, and then we'll have to discuss the details. So I think it's everyone's responsibility. I think we need to be wise, not to be haughty, and not to be aggressive in all directions. Some of the things that they are doing, I can understand, I can hear, I can compromise on. Some of the things they're saying, I think they're being over aggressive. So I meet with them, try to talk to them, try to understand them, try to convince them to lower the volume and to be less aggressive and so on. And there's a lot more to be said about it. That was the short version.
Thank you.
Yeah, you wrote Michael, in the chat, that we should not allow the 20% to change the character of Ra'anana, but at least this party now is more than 20%. And I'm afraid that the state, that's what I'm saying. I think the noise in the media, the noise that the 10% on either side is making is a lot more than their power. I think the 40% on each side is for political reasons, is afraid to say out loud, I want to work with the 40% on the other side, because then they lose their voters. Then 10% of their voters are going to move to the 10% of the extreme, and another 10% who are in the middle are going to vote for a middle way party, and therefore they're afraid they're losing their political power, and the way to be powerful is to be an extremist or to join with the extremists. And therefore, I believe that the way for us to change it is both social, like talking about this and doing it and acting on it, getting different people, different opinions to work together, and also to vote for the party that is talking about broad agreements and not about being extreme in either direction. So I call upon us to act in society, in our town, in the country, in these different ways, so that we can continue working in a way that encourages understanding and being considerate of one another, while maintaining a very Jewish state and a very liberal state at the same time. Not so easy. It's easy to say it in words, not as easy to carry it out.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes.
First of all, I really like Rabbi Tzvi's approach in the sense that we should look at not necessarily what the policies are, but how the policies are being advocated, and are they being advocated respectfully and constructively, and with open-mindedness that, hey, look, not everybody agrees with everything that I say. I mean, I think I'd make a wonderful dictator, but I'm not going to get you votes. So we don't have to worry about that. But the point is that, yeah, that people need to listen, and conditioning one's vote using that as a criterion is actually a different way of thinking about things. So I think it's a very productive, very powerful way of thinking of things. I do want to say that at the outset that I voted for the new party, and for a variety of reasons. I've gone to a number of their meetings. I have to say I was astounded, really astounded, that they got 7 out of 19 mandates in the city council. I actually did not expect them to get more than 1 or 2 based on the strength of some of their candidates. But I have spoken in detail to a few of the people, some of them Rabbi Tzvi mentioned. Some of them I think are radical in a not very good way, but many of them are not. And those are the people to concentrate on.
I will say that one of the things they're doing is they're starting a certain form of public transportation that is happening in many cities in Israel, not only in Ra'anana. And the fact that it's happening is a reflection of something that's happening in society and cannot be ignored and should not be ignored. It's not enough just to say in Ra'anana we should make a scandal about this and then protest against the mayor who brought them into the coalition and so on. On the one hand, and when they did this, they were careful not to do it kind of in your face and dafka have the buses go through certain more religious neighborhoods and so on, which to my mind is not the issue, but at least it's showing a certain attempt on their side not to be in the face. Another thing is that this past Shabbat, Ilana, I'm sorry, it distracts me. Another thing I'd like to say is this past Friday night, they organized.
Sorry.
The religious public in Ra'anana arranged, it had to do with bereaved families and the war. There was a very big Friday night davening at Yad Labanim this past Friday night. Larger numbers than we've had in the past. Part of it is because shuls and rabbis who did not join these initiatives in the past join now. In the past, the only shul that ever closed down was Kino David. Now other shuls closed down and all came to this. one of the bereaved families whose son was killed just 2 or 3 weeks ago. They were part of the organizers and pushers for this, so that brings people out and things like that. And I said to some of the other rabbis who came for the first time that what we need is to make this kind of tefillah and get these kind of numbers together because someone has a birthday, not because somebody was killed. Because we want to be together, not because we're in pain, these kinds of things. But it was positive. It had a little bit of a political twist, a bit of a political intention, because they wanted to show that the religious public in Ra'anana is strong. But which, for that reason, because I was aware of this, I made sure that there are no how do you say, neumim, speeches, no speeches, no signs, we are the religious against the Democratic Party, or nothing like that. It was davening, it was purely davening, people getting together and tefillah together. And we joined, and I do things with people that I don't agree with because we're doing something that we agree upon. So I think it was a positive thing. And I think we do have to show that there's a big religious, that there are a lot of religious people in Ra'anana who care about Shabbat. And, but then the statement should be, come and talk with us and let's see what we can do together, and not, therefore, do what I say. That's not going to work. So just to show a show of power, I was okay with that. And there was in the back of my head a little bit of a fear that someone is going to come and do something against this gathering and pull down the mechitza or something like that. And thank God that did not happen, for one of a few possible reasons. One of them is because no one was interested in doing it. Another one is because some people were interested in but other people made sure they don't. As you say, Mark, some of the leaders of the party, I could see them acting in that way, and others not. So we have yet to see where everything goes. Eliezer.
First of all, like Mark, I completely agree with you about 80-80. And I hope that if there are national elections, that you might take an active role in furthering that. But at the moment, we have 40-100. And 40% of people support the government, and they want to do 100% of what they want to do. And I think this is
Which is true of the other political side as well.
I don't know.
We were
The
there.
ruling party always has an obligation. I think more of an obligation than the opposition, because the ruling party rules, and so. And I think that, and also it's at this debate that you were at, in which, if I heard right, the leading number one of one of the religious parties,
Number two. Yeah.
was it number two?
Yeah.
Said that the Tatzpaniot got what they deserved.
No.
No. Well, I thought I heard that, but okay. And anyway,
I don't remember if he said it or not, but I know him and he would say that.
oh, okay.
Think about Yoram. Yoram wouldn't say that.
I'm very.
We've got Don with the question also. He
Yeah,
would-
Don, Rabbi Don has a question.
But the thing is that the vocal religious representation in the government is completely unacceptable. And since we don't have elections, we don't have the possibility of elections, technically, for another 2.5 years or something like that. I think many people in Ra'anana, including myself, felt that the only way to express ourselves was to vote for this party. And I, in discussions in Hukei Pai, I expressed my personal opinion that that there shouldn't be extreme positions, but I think that the religious establishment in the country is doing religion a terrible disservice.
Mhm.
And, okay, but that's,
So I think the interesting new thought that I hear from you is that the fact that there's such very strong um, negative feelings towards the present government, which is, I don't know if we would call it 40. It's more than 50% in the Knesset.
yeah, but if I'm going polls, the continental should support.
Yeah, but you know, you can argue this in different ways because democracy is you don't overthrow the government because the polls are against it, right? You wait for the next date of elections, which I would 100% agree with if we were going through normal times, but these are not normal times. But these are bigger arguments, broader arguments. But what you're saying is because of this feeling of frustration with the reality, with the situation, that gave them more voters because this was their people's way to express something in local elections about which direction things should go. That's interesting. I certainly think that the local has been extremely influenced by the national. The whole idea that people are up in arms against this in this way is because a lot of it is because of the national atmosphere. Some of it is because some of the local religious parties act with some, not all, but some of the aggressive aspects that you see in the government and the religious political parties that are doing this disservice to religion, which I agree with. And so they reacted with that on the local level because also the local level is having these kind of energies brought into it. But I must say, which is what I said to you at the beginning, also on the local level, the aggressions, the aggressiveness is now on both sides. I think Mark expressed that, and you did, saying that you expressed your opinion in what do you call them in Hugei Bait?
Parliament meetings, that was before the election.
Parliament meetings,
I saw
right?
that in the
Right.
outcomes.
Right, but you know, the bottom line is they're functioning in a certain way, and some of it is on both sides, I must say. Some of it is aggressive, much more than I would like in both directions. Don,
Hello, everybody.
hello. Where are you,
yeah.
Don?
I guess the question,
Don, are you here or there?
oh, yeah, well, that's always the question. We got back just after midnight last night. And we are now the parents, or at least one parent and one step parent of a well-married woman. And
Mazal tov.
a nice Jewish family on the way. So that's
Okay.
good. Anyway, I guess the question I have, and I do understand that there's a coalition form, and that always skews things, but I guess we were led to the impression that the mayor, at least the mayor, ran on a ticket of things aren't going to change.
First of all, I would very much not like to represent the mayor. I
No,
can
I'm
agree
not
or disagree with him.
anyone. I'm asking if we've understood this correctly.
I don't know. I don't really see on the level of local elections, I don't see so much ideology and values. It's more a personal race of who's going to be more, more popular and get more votes. I like to get to know the people, and I can and I do form. I spend time with talking to these people, and I will after a year or two, be able to say I like this person. I like the way he thinks, the way he acts. Better than another person, but it's more individual than a specific ideology. But in any case, after you have the results with a mayor and with a council, then you have to make the math and create a coalition. And he did try other ways of creating a coalition, but there was an attempt to make a coalition without this party. And I'm very happy that didn't happen, because I think the situation would have been much, much, much worse if they were in the opposition. Because if they were in the opposition, I would not be surprised at all if there was a big davening at Yad Labanim and they would come and try to disrupt it. And they would be up in arms in so many ways. I think that the negative energies would be much worse. The coalition would have been very religious, with 4 or 5 religious members in the coalition. Without the 7 members of the largest party in town. And I think that would have been horrendous for all of us. I think not everything they're doing in the coalition I like or think they're doing properly, then, and I'm happy about, but would have been much worse if they were in the opposition. And what would have happened is that next time they would have had, someone said to me, they would have had the whole 19 seats in the city council. I don't think that would happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they passed the number 10. So I would not want them in that position. But these are a lot of political cheshbonis, as you say, the politics skew, that's the word used, skew the rationale. It's more about what can I get pragmatically as a politician. Okay, thank you. So what I see is that there's room for a longer discussion of these issues, not only in this elite group, also maybe set a date and discuss this in a broader way in the Kehillah. Thank you. Now, as far as we were discussing the halachic decision making in the conservative movement, Eliezer's daughter, not a secret, is a conservative female rabbi, Rabba Chaya. She is she still the rabbi of the shul in Givat Tzarfatit?
No, she had to give it up.
She have to give it up. She became the dean of the Schefter Institute in Jerusalem, which trains conservative rabbis. You're mute.
I got that. It's not the conservative movement, it's the Masorti movement.
Masorti, the Israeli.
Different. The
conservative.
Masorti movement in Israel is not identical to the conservative movement in the US.
Okay, thank you. What?
I didn't think so.
Okay. In any case, I have a nice, a respectful relationship with Rabba Chaya. We can discuss things. I think, did you get from her the article?
Yeah.
Eliezer got from her and sent me an article written by Rabbi David Golinkin, who we discussed in the past, about how the halachic, how the Masorti, well, he uses both terms. He says there that he's talking about Israel, but sometimes he uses, and he quotes a lot of American rabbis. In any case, how the Masorti movement makes its halachic decisions. This 30-something long paper or article booklet has been published several times, but I believe the last time was in the 80s or just before 1990 or something like that. I don't know that it's been changed or renewed since then, but that maybe it can give us some knowledge. Just today, I started reading some of it, and I'm more or less in the first part that's discussing more about what is the attitude of the Masorti movement to halakha and being halachically committed, not about how to make the decision making. It does include the idea, the concept that there is tradition and there is change, and both are valuable for the continuation of Judaism, which is a statement that I could make myself, but I'm sure that we disagree on the details of what exactly it means, and that's what we're going to discuss. I will, I promise to try to keep reading the whole thing through until the end and see if it can give us more accurate points for our discussion. Rabba Chaya also offered Eliezer that she could join us for one meeting and say something about the way she sees it.
I asked her what she would.
You asked her if she would.
And she said she agreed.
And she agreed. And I agreed with Eliezer that I will have a talk with her and see if we can do that in a constructive way. And then maybe she'll present something to us, and then we can, with her present and or, in other words, for a time, for a certain period of time, we can discuss it with her once, and then a second time discuss it without her being present. But in any case, I will talk to her and see if we can use her knowledge and experience as something that we can get more up to date and accurate information, because rather than talk about something, we can hear from someone who is active in that place. So hopefully I will talk to her and we'll see if we can make that happen in the foreseeable future, and then we can discuss what we hear from her. In any case, for now, I'd like to continue where we were at. And one of the things that we discussed was one of the differences that I see in the document that I have is that the conservative rabbis don't have a hierarchy of the authority of different generations of rabbis, meaning the tradition of halakha in at least the way the Orthodox see it. I believe it was, before they were Reform and Conservative, this was the tradition of Yahadut, is that there are different levels of authority, that the Mishnah, the Torah shebichtav, certainly, and the written Torah, and then within the oral Torah, there is the Sanhedrin, the High Court, and the rabbis of the Mishnah, and then the rabbis of the Gemara, and we don't directly go against their decisions and their halacha making, halacha deciding, and so on. And whereas the conservative rabbis consider it something to be open in all generations, they do consider it to be that we are committed to halakha, but that we can decide on what changes need to be made, and in any way that we see fit within what they consider to be halachic criteria, and they differ themselves from Reform, because they express it. This I did see in Rabbi Golinskin's what should we call it, a booklet, in any case, document. He expresses it very explicitly. The Reform are not committed to halakha. As conservative rabbis, we are committed to halakha, but we make the decisions about the change where we see that is right. So it's not that there isn't halakha, but they're more open to change, and they have the authority to make these changes the way they see it. And I would say, what would I say about Orthodox Rabbanut? Orthodox Rabbanut, in a very subtle way. Well, first of all, it's very clearly does not see it in the same way. We are much more restricted in the authority that we have to make certain changes. At the same time, if we feel very, very, very strongly about changes that need to be made, we look for legitimate halachic reasoning sources. We might find one source that differs from others and say that, okay, today we can paskin, make a psak, make a decision making of the halakha according to that one source, even though in the past it was a very minor source or one source against the majority and things like that, or that there's a source that you can understand differently what it meant and things like this, and it has to be brought up into halachic discourse amongst rabbis and to be discussed. Of course, you'll have tremendous arguments about who are rabbis. I'll give a couple of examples. The reason why we repeat the Amidah, Chazarat Hashatz, why we say Amidah silently and then repeat it out loud, the original reason is because there weren't books. Books just did not exist. There were manuscripts, but there weren't printed books. So there wasn't a book called Sidur. There was Tfilah. There was Nusach. There was wording of the Tfilah, but it was passed on orally. If you were one of those people who knew the Tfilah, you could say it. But if you didn't know, you couldn't say it, and you didn't have a book to read from. So only a minority of people knew the Tfilah. Not everyone, and there weren't books, Sidurim, for everyone to have. And therefore, what they did is people who knew the Amidah said it silently, those who did know. And afterwards, someone repeated it out loud for all those who did not know to say it themselves, and they would answer Amen to each one of the brachot, and that was Amidah. So okay, that's one thing. And this became a norm in the Jewish communities and the Jewish tefillah. And it's not a modern invention that people talk during Chazarat HaShatz. Okay, the most quiet time in shul, universally, I believe, is Amidah, and probably the least quiet time in many shuls is the repetition of Amidah, because you're repeating something I just said 2 minutes ago, and I'm passive. I'm not active. I don't have to say anything now. Just say Amen. Well, yeah, between Amen and Amen, I'm going to discuss whatever I want to discuss with the guys sitting around me, and it's kind of beats the idea and the purpose. And the Rambam, Maimonides, wanted to stop the repetition of Amidah because of that. As I said, it's not functioning the way it was supposed to. And this is before there was print, before there were printed books. But he said it's counterproductive. Take us a few hundred years forward, and there are printed books, and we have books in shul and sidurim, and anyone who can read Hebrew or can read another language can read it in another language and can. Do we need the Chazarat HaShatz? Rambam's idea was not accepted. He was rejected. Okay, so if ever there's an Orthodox rabbi who wants to make a change and the change is not accepted, wow, you're in good company. Rambam wanted to make a change, and he was not, his idea was rejected. His initiative was not accepted. So you have to talk to other rabbis and get a consensus and get a group together that will encourage this and so on. There are all kinds of things like that could happen.
And he didn't make a revolution. Objection.
No, he didn't. And he didn't make a movement with a capital or not capital, conserve or not conserve. But it's interesting, and I would say there's another reason for the repetition of Amidah, and that is the difference between individual tefillah and communal tefillah. Because as silently we each say it separately. Communally, we say something, we listen to something, we sing. That's a reason to sing in the repetition of Amidah, because it makes it a joint tefillah for a group of people together. And that's another aspect of the chazarah, of the repetition of Amidah, that I consider to be valuable. So there are different sides to it, but it's just an example of how someone will want to make a change and is accepted, is not accepted. The rabbis who made the decision that we're going to say the Amidah silently and then repeat it had greater authority than Maimonides, than Rambam, but he had a reason to make the change, but it was not accepted. These are things that could be considered. Let me take another example at the other extreme, and that is women saying Kaddish in Orthodoxy, okay? The sources about it's a fascinating topic that should be dealt with much more in a much broader way, but just in short, Kaddish, first of all, can be partially instituted, Kaddish for a person who's in mourning, okay, after the passing of a parent or other close relatives, and then saying Kaddish for the year. Part of that was for people who cannot lead the tefillah, like a child. And so it's there very, very constructive in a situation where women are not leading the tefillah to be able to say Kaddish, or at least to say Kaddish. There are sources from 300 years ago about enabling, in certain situations, for girls to say Kaddish. The situation was when the deceased did not have sons. So there was no son saying Kaddish for the father. So there was a little leeway, a little bit of an opening for a girl to say Kaddish at home, not in shul. Make a minyan at home, and she can say Kaddish. But once you've said that, I'll give you an example. How many women are mentioned by name in Tanakh? 20, 30, more or less? How many men are mentioned in name in Tanakh? Several hundred? Certainly not equal. You could say that this is an expression of something which is prejudiced against women, or you could say it's an expression of reality. But the fact that there are women who are significant figures, who are leaders like Miriam, like Dvorah, it shows us that this is something that is possible. So thousands of years later, today, women are studying Torah and becoming scholars in Torah and becoming religious leaders in a way that did not exist in the past in numbers. It did exist. It did exist. You can go through the list in history, including Osnat Barazani from what are they called? Not Iraqis. The people in Iraq who don't have an independent state. What's their name? The Kurds, right? She was Kurd, Kurdit. She was the Rosh Yeshiva there. She gave a shir. She had they put a mechitza, so the guys listening to her shir wouldn't see her, but she gave the shiur. So she was the daughter of the Rosh Yeshiva, and she became the leading figure later on. So you can collect these individual stories from history once every X hundreds of years, but they prove that it's possible. So today we can broaden it. So that's the idea of taking, in a nutshell, of taking Kaddish, which was agreed upon by many authorities that it's possible in certain conditions, in a certain way, but and today make it more or less equal that anyone who wants to can say Kaddish. Is it accepted or not? So let me tell you about the Rabbanut that is doing a disservice to the Yahadut, that number one, do you want to encourage or discourage women who want to study and be religious leaders? So the present formal religious institution, the leaders of the state, institutionalized religious institutions, are absolutely, totally opposed to it, and even opposed to having some learned women. Are you aware that Israel does not have chief rabbis now? Because there was supposed to be elections, and they couldn't agree on having 10 women in the group of 150 people who join in the vote for voting who will be the next chief rabbi. And they wanted to have 10 women, and they wouldn't agree to put in 10 women, 10 scholarly women, and they wouldn't agree to do that. So it went by another month, until they nullified the nomination of the chief rabbis. And right now, they have more or less one rabbi or 1.5 rabbis functioning as filling in the roles of the chief rabbi. And the man who's doing it right now, if you asked me to vote tomorrow, I would vote for him. He's there. He's been in Rabbanut for decades as a dayan, and he's filling in as a temporary memale makom. How do you say that in English? Substitute. A temporary substitute for the chief rabbi. And, keep him there. Let's keep the substitute forever. But whatever. But in any case, they're opposed to women being recognized as having scholarly knowledge of Torah, studying, being encouraged, and so on. And when we, as a group of rabbis, male and female, Orthodox, put out a tshuva that women can say Kaddish, so one of the leading rabbis says these are, in Hebrew, Liga Dalit, Rabbanim Liga Dalit, meaning there's the national league, the second level, the third level. These are rabbis from the fourth league, not from the, we're not good players. We're not skilled in our sport. We're only on those local low-level teams. And that was his reaction, meaning I'm against it, and I don't care what you say. I'm just going to ridicule you. I'm going to discuss the points that you made, the sources that you brought. So it's not easy to decide who is going to decide about what's to be decided, and about who's going to decide who decides what's going to be decided. Okay, so our tools are different. We're more limited. There are options. The more the source, the higher the authority of the source that we're trying to disagree with or change, or accept that there's time, that there are reasons to make a change, the higher the authority of this source, the more difficult it will be for an Orthodox rabbi to be able to make a decision, and for that decision to be accepted, that this change can occur. But it is not absolutely impossible if a reasoning and an argument is being set in place with proper sources, with proper reasoning, rationale, and you convince a certain group of rabbis to accept it, it may be accepted, and many times something that was suggested at one time was rejected, and maybe in later, later years it was accepted. So who knows what what the future has in store for us in that realm. I'll speak about one other example, and we'll end with that. It's in a different way. Today in the modern world, burial is becoming an issue, because in the ancient world, you buried someone, but the burial site that was not preserved for a long time. So, and the numbers of people were not so great. So you had a certain place that was designated for burial, and it lasted for many centuries. Today, the numbers of people alive, therefore the number of people dying, are much greater. The burial sites are conserved for a much longer time, and it's becoming an ecological question. One of the solutions for this within Jewish law, within Halakha, is that after a year that you have burial in a certain cave, and then after a year, what you do is you collect the bones into a box called a sarcophag, at least in Hebrew, and then sarcophagus. Thank you.
Yes.
That's a good translation from Hebrew. Very good. And then you can have, for hundreds of years, you can have a room that will be good for burial for a few centuries. So there is a small group of people, and the rabbi, who's a friend of mine that I appreciate, who are pushing for this. And this is not, we're not making up a new Jewish custom. This is the way things were done 2,000 years ago. That was the norm. And even this, to say this is a norm that used to be the way of Jewish law, we can reinstitute what used to be Jewish law. We have all the sources, all the backing, and all the basis to claim that because this was the way of Jewish burial in the past, we can do this again. And still, it's very hard to move this. But, in 2024, it's being very difficult to do it. It is not accepted by the law of giving strength to the Rabbanut in the state of Israel. It's not accepted. But there are people who are signing documents to say that if in the future, years after I die, the halakha in the state will be accepted that you can do this, then I would like this to be done with my remains. So that maybe in the future, who knows, maybe 200 years from now, our great-great-great-grandchildren, this will be the norm. And now it's a big struggle with a very, it doesn't seem to be making any progress right now, but who knows if the future will be more accepted. So you have to use the tools. The tools are more restricted. The higher the authority, the more difficult it is to make a change or to claim that it's time that there's a justified change. You have to use sources and claims that are within the halachic system, and you have to convince others of it, and sometimes it's a long process. That I would say, if I see the difference between conservative and Orthodox here, conservative makes it much easier, maybe too easy. Orthodoxy makes it much more difficult, possibly too difficult. and maybe there's some kind of positive influence. Although what it creates today is when there's something that's more it accepts change faster, it just makes some of the Orthodox society close up very strictly and not allow any change. So I don't know, but that's the way I see this issue, and we will continue in the future. It will not be in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we have a conference of our group of male and female rabbis who made this decision about Kaddish of women. In 3 weeks, it will be right after Tisha B'Av. I don't think that we'll have a meeting right after Tisha B'Av. And in 4 weeks, who knows? Bezrat Hashem. Maybe yes.
Thank you.
Shal Koach, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Take care. Bye.